Hey guys, welcome to Anglers Outpost. I'm George.
I'm Josh.
Okay, and here we go with the premiere episode of Anglers Outpost. And what a show we got lined up for today. We got Master Angler Katie Corgiat is going to join us, and I am so excited to talk to her. What a fisherman she is. But what a year we've had, Josh. I mean, the thing started off, we've been busy since like day one.
It's been a wild year so far.
It has. I mean, we kicked it off with what? Pennsylvania Outdoor Life. We did the show with them with the ice fishing. Then it was the trade shows. We were out doing the Great American Sportsman Show out in Harrisburg. They asked us to come out and do the Suffering Show in New York. We were busy there. A trip with Lunkerville. We did that show. Midwest Outdoors that you were highlighting.
That's right, yeah.
That was a fun show.
That was so good.
I know. We have to do more of that stuff.
Couldn't agree more.
But it's just been a great year, and I want to really thank our sponsor, Deeper. For you guys, you know, Deeper sponsors us, and we really appreciate them. For you guys, please log on to deepersonar.com, and you can see why Deeper's the #1 sonar in the world as far as a portable sonar goes. They are really great folks. Check them out. But I think to kick things off, I think we want to bring Katie Corgiat on. I don't know if you guys have ever seen her. She's been on Lunkerville. She is all over social media. This girl is just fantastic. I know she touts herself as a multi-species angler, but my God, I think she's an every species angler. Let's bring her on here. Katie, you with us?
I sure am. Hello, gentlemen.
How you doing today, Katie?
Great. How are you guys doing?
Oh, just
fantastic.
Fantastic. It's just a great day. Now, I have to say, we look at your social profile, and it just blows me away.
Well, I can't tell you how appreciative I am for this opportunity, and it's so neat how you can form a connection with someone almost instantly. George and I started talking, a couple months ago now, right?
Yeah.
And here we are sharing fishing tips and tricks and stories, and I still want to get out to the East Coast and fish with you guys, get some stripers.
Oh,
that's on my list.
That could happen. Before we get too far in this conversation, how about we take a moment to show the guys at home what Katie is all about as far as fishing.
Let's
go take a look.
Hey there, George and Josh. Katie Corgiat from Minnesota, and let me show you how to fish the Corgiat way.
I don't know about you, Josh, but that was pretty wild.
No, that was great, seriously.
You know, stuff like, you guys see profiles on social media, you see guys catching bass, you see guys catching some pike or something like that. Holy cow, how many species do you fish for, Katie?
Well, it's funny you ask that because I actually do keep a fishing bucket list, quote unquote. And so far I'm over 40 species, which doesn't sound like a lot, but let me tell you, that is quite a haul just from a few times going down to Florida and fishing in saltwater while living in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota is a very rich fishery, but you have probably a handful of species, maybe up to 10 species or so of the core fish that you go after. Could I go into multiple species of carp? Sure, but that's not really what I'm after. I'm more after that experience and targeting those trophy fish.
Well, you really do. I mean, it's evident when you look through some of the videos, your Instagram, your Facebook. I mean, everything you pick up is a trophy. Even just bass fishing. I'm looking at some of the bass you catch. I didn't realize they got that big up north over there.
Oh, don't you know? There's my Minnesotan for you. Yeah, sure, you betcha. But in all seriousness, I've been really lucky. The season this year has been very different from last year's. I kind of look at benchmarking and say, okay, early June is really the hot time. That's when all the fish are going nuts. And then we get into July when those water temps go up. The fish go a little bit deeper in the water. But this year has been super wonky. We had a very warm winter followed by a weird ice and then thaw and then ice again spring. So I think the fish are just as confused as we are in Minnesota. So
well, you wouldn't know it by your Facebook post, I'll tell you that.
Well, thank you. There's a big debate about mid-season, midsummer fishing. Are people going into deeper water, or are venturing back into the shallows? And one tip, I guess, that I have in that respect is I'm still finding, knock on wood, I'm still finding them produce in the shallows. I've been trolling religiously on one of my premier lakes, and that's kind of how I've been getting the bigger northern and even big bass go after either, like a shad wrap that I'm trolling in the back, or a live sucker minnow if I'm going the live route. And recently, I just kept seeing pods of little schools of bait fish in the shallows by the lily pads, kept seeing some swirls from fish. Wasn't sure if they were carp at first, but then I noticed there were bass that were just not only blowing up on the lily pads, but blowing up around the shallows there. So I said, let's take it a little bit shallower. So I started throwing out topwaters, and then I also started using the very traditional method of bobber fishing with a live bait when I wanted to go the live route. And let me tell you, I would throw it out and the bobber would hit the water and I wouldn't even see the bobber. It would just keep going. That's how aggressive these bass were.
That's fantastic. I mean, so many people are afraid of float fishing, like it's just for kids, but it can be a really productive tactic if you use it right and the right time to use it.
I couldn't agree more. There was a
Absolutely.
phase that I went through where I would be horrified if anyone saw me using a float. And that was a while ago. And now there's lots of different types of float fishing. You have spring bobber. There's lots of ways to do things. But now I've definitely found my place. That float fishing, there's absolutely a time and place for it. It's not just a beginner thing.
And believe it or not, it can be very strategic. And that's the conception, or the perception, I should say, of, wow, there's a bobber. Well, I'm going to use a bobber. We're back to high school, preschool, almost fishing way back. But it is some strategy behind it, behind the depth of the bobber, behind what kind of bait you're using, and where in that water column you're wanting the bait to end up in.
Well, I think it's a good tactic too. I mean, we're talking midsummer. I mean, it's early August right now, and fish are definitely pressured. So, I mean, they may not hit a real fast-moving bait. They're kind of sluggish, so you have to adapt to what's going to trigger a bite. And if you have to slow down, use a bobber and some live bait, that may be the tactic you need, and it certainly produces for you.
Correct. And what I've been doing recently, not to give away all the tips and tricks, but one suggestion is, even though it is harder on your live bait, and my live bait of choice happens to be small sucker minnows, but it is a little bit harder on the bait. But I will say I have been casting a lot more frequently than you typically would with a bobber. You think, okay, I'm going to put a big sucker minnow on there. I'm going to let it sit for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I have, to my bait's misfortune, I've been switching it up so that if I'm not getting a bite in 5 minutes, sometimes even 2 minutes, I reel it in and I do fan casts. So I'm starting from left, making my way to right in the area that I'm targeting and just going that direction. And I tell you what, because they're so sluggish right now, you almost do have to drop it right on top of their nose. And I find it to be much more productive and efficient to go that route rather than just letting the bobber sit and the minnow swim around in the one area.
Well, it's obviously producing for you. I mean, every day I look at your Facebook. I mean, you're just holding another 5-6 pound bass, and that's just that's just insane as far as I'm concerned. So, but what is your favorite type of fishing to do? I mean, you obviously fish a lot of largemouth. Is that one of your favorites?
I do love largemouth. However, I will say that actually northern pike is my favorite species in freshwater.
I love to hear that. I love to hear
pike are just so aggressive. You know, there's such a stigma against them. Ooh, they're slimy. Ooh, they're toothy, snakes, all that jazz. But really, I just love how ferocious they are. They can explode on lures just as aggressively as bass can. Plus, in my opinion, they fight a little bit harder too when you get to the point where you're bringing in a big one that's coming in like a log at first, and then it sees the boat and your drag goes screaming. So that's kind of my favorite thing to go after here in Minnesota.
What's your biggest pike, Katie?
The largest pike I ever caught was a 45-inch
Oh
northern.
my goodness.
Huge.
Wow.
Wow.
Yep.
I haven't caught muskie that big.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a healthy fish. Part of me thinks that he swam his way down from Canada, but you never know. I've never seen one even close to that size here before.
Wow, that's amazing.
You hear of the big lakes in Minnesota, so Leech Lake, Mille Lacs, these premier fisheries up north, and everyone around here says, oh, I'm going up north for the weekend. And I like to almost prove them wrong and stay in these local lakes. I live in the Southwest Metro, and there are some local lakes in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area that are just these hidden gems. I actually caught my second largest northern, which was a 40-inch northern, right off of a dock in a very tiny lake, which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah, you don't need actually big water to catch big fish. It can be just the opposite sometimes.
Especially pike. You get a lot of forage in a place, and they will just grow huge.
Right, because they're the king of the pond, right?
Yeah.
So they're the ones that are living longer and have a large supply of fish to feed off of, which is great.
Well, I have to say, we're a little bit jealous here as far as pike fishing goes. Normally we have to drive, about 5 hours north, I guess, Josh?
For any reasonable pike fishing,
for any kind of thing, within respectable pike fishing anyway. So that's nice that you have it in your backyard there.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you guys ever make it out to Minnesota, I'll be happy to put you on a premier pike spot.
We just may have to take you up on that one.
Yep.
Yeah, pike's good. We love it here. Generally, I used to go up to the St. Lawrence River, Thousand Islands area, and just go for pike fishing. It was a great weekend of fishing. Either that or go up to, anywhere up in the Adirondacks or something like that. You get them as well.
Sure. There's just something about them that it's a very polar fish. People either love them or hate them.
Yeah,
and so for the fishermen who realize how much the catch pays off when they catch the larger size northern, it's great. It's such an adrenaline rush. Now, what I will tell you, both gentlemen, is as much as I love freshwater and as blessed as I am to live in a very abundant fishery like Minnesota, my heart and my passion is in the saltwater. So we talk about Gulf Coast versus, more of the deeper oceanic side of the coasts. I have religiously gone down to Florida on more of the Gulf side because that's where my grandma lives. So it's hey, let's go visit grandma, and hey, let's
it's a good
go
excuse,
grab a
right?
rod. Yeah, go grab a rod and go on the beach and fish that way. But probably about 5 years ago now, I discovered the beauty of offshore fishing for monster fish down in the Keys, Florida Keys. So that's really where my passion is, and I have a lot of saltwater species that I'm trying to check off the list, and just something about the fact that you can cast in those waters and you never know what you're going to catch is so appealing.
Well, again, looking at your Facebook and some of your other social media, that is not obvious even a little bit. I mean, I have to go and dive right into the grouper that you just caught. I mean, holy cow. I mean, it's not often that even as guys we go out and get, a 500-pound fish, and here you are, you're a little tiny 5'2", and you were just manhandling that grouper, and he finally gave up. But why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So this is kind of a odd blend of who I am as a fisherwoman and as a person. By day, I am in corporate America. Right now, I'm actually in a nice dress, so there's the dress suit mentality, and then I keep a change of clothes in the car and go fishing afterwards. And it's kind of the same in Florida too. Of here you are, and you mentioned 5'2" girl, maybe someone who's wearing makeup, and they're like, "Really, this girl fishes?" And believe it or not, yes. So what I started doing is the hybrid of tomboy and girly girl Katie started boxing about 3 years ago now, and the reason I started doing that, sure, everyone wants to look good, tone up, etc. But I started boxing because I was going on my first offshore trip, saltwater fishing, and I wanted to build up strength and endurance to be able to handle these fish. And so I have been consistently doing that for about 3 years now, and now it's to the point where I can, as you mentioned, kind of keep up with even the most athletic guys out there and reeling in these fish and being challenged for half an hour, even a couple hours at end, where you're like old man in the sea style, hooked up with a big fish. So getting back to your original ask about this grouper, thought I'd preface it with that to say we were down in the Gulf and we were fishing in all of 20 feet of water.
Oh, was that all it was?
That was it. So we were going for shark and found this nice spot where we showed up on the spot, and you can see fish scattering, and you can even already see the fins of sharks, which is just such a cool experience. I was on the boat with a friend of mine who had never caught a shark before, and the captain. And we started fishing, started catching some fish, used some fish for bait, and boom, right away we have some sharks on. So I'm hooked up with what turned out to be a 6-foot hammerhead, and my friend is hooked up with her first shark ever, which is a 4-foot black tip shark.
Nice.
She's excited, and she's reeling it in, and we get it close to the boat, and I had a GoPro. As you'll see from the footage too, had the GoPro and the sharks up there, and all of a sudden we see a shadow, like, I'm not exaggerating, about the size of a small car. And we started freaking out. The captain said, "Quick, give me the GoPro." And he stuck it under the water with just enough time for us to see this 4-foot shark, which is typically, you think of Shark Week, the top predator in the ocean, being engulfed by the mouth of a huge Goliath grouper. So that was the thrill of a lifetime. We were just screaming, and the captain might have issued a profanity or two just from the excitement.
No, I seen that footage. Did you actually catch it on that same setup? I mean, did he stay on that shark? Is that how you caught him?
No. So here's what happened. So my friend, who happened to be a 65-year-old woman that I brought with me, she has now a huge 500-pound fish that's eaten her shark. The captain said, "Just hold on for dear life, don't try and fight it," because those Goliath groupers, just like the big bass, right? They get really lazy when they're that big, and they just want to be able to open their mouth and eat something. So that guy swam back down to the bottom of the wreck that we were fishing, and he felt a little bit of tension from the top and eventually spit the shark back out because it wasn't worth his time. It wasn't worth his effort to try and eat a shark. So he pushed the shark back out. We got the poor shark, R.I.P. He didn't do so hot.
I'm sure.
But I said to the captain, because I'm still hooked up with a hammerhead at this point, I said to the captain, "I want to catch this Goliath." And he looks at me and he laughs. I'm like, "No, I'm serious, John. Hoping to catch it." And he said, "Okay, little lady, you think you can handle it?" And I said, "There's only one way to find out." So what happened is it actually took me about another 45 minutes to get the hammerhead in, because he was foul hooked in the fin.
Nice.
Get that guy in, and we go back. We had put a little marker on where that Goliath was living on the wreck, so we went back and literally dropped the grouper rod down, and it was 10 seconds, and he had eaten my bait. So I was not prepared for that to happen that quickly, but all I had was just a strap around my waist to be kind of the fulcrum point for the rod, and set the hook, and man, it was battle royale from there. So it was the feeling of basically being hooked up to a car that is shaking for about half an hour, and finally was able to get it up to the surface.
So
wow.
I got a gear question. I'm sure you can answer this for me. I've always been obsessed with big drag. Do you know how much drag you were using when you caught that Goliath grouper?
So the drag was really intense on that rod reel setup, and we actually were afraid that it was going to snap because you could hear the crinkling. I think the drag was set at like 250.
Holy cow.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was heavy.
Well, I can see the bend in your rod. I mean, you were really giving that fish a workout, or vice versa.
Oh,
but, I mean,
absolutely.
that was a battle royale.
I'm having to think about this here. And I definitely, with that in mind, I definitely have caught the smallest, biggest fish here between the three of us, because I know you've caught some big marlin, she's caught a 500-pound grouper, and I'm sitting in a measly, nearly 7-foot sturgeon.
Well, that's nothing to be ashamed about either.
But she definitely got me beat for weight. I mean, that thing was probably only a little over 200 pounds.
No, it's not.
That is still an impressive fish.
Well,
Thank you.
One of the things we always talk about is when you get a trophy here, it's not the weight of anything. It's what caliber fish is it within its species.
That's right. Yep.
So we look at a fish amongst itself. It's not so much. A trophy is just a better than average.
Just
size.
having fun.
Yeah, but. We got you beat, Josh. That's okay.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. You got me.
But back to your grouper. I mean, that's just a tremendous catch. I mean, I know Josh was just saying I caught a marlin. My biggest was 550-pound blue marlin off of North Carolina. And that was about a 2-hour battle with a really, really good captain chasing it. I know you were in a small skiff boat out there. That had to be a battle. I just can't imagine that.
Oh my gosh, let me tell you, it was almost like Jaws 2.0 out there, because we were in this really small boat. I'm trying to recall, I think the grouper was 11, 12 feet long. I mean, it was a huge fish with a gut as round as it was long, it seemed like. I mean, the thing was just behemoth. And the problem was, what we didn't know at first, we started noticing we were taking on water. Like, oh, what's going on? Well, the weight of that grouper with me off the back of the boat actually caused a crack in the back of the boat, and the bilge pump stopped working.
Ooh.
So here we are 3 miles out, literally in shark infested waters, and I'm fighting this fish, and we had to haul in for dear life to make sure that we were okay. So I mean, I just got to put have to put a quick plug in for the Captain John Broussard from Shark Chaser Charters, because man, that was probably one of the most incredible days I've ever had out on the water, and he made it all possible.
Very nice. So I just wanted to add, so you caught that grouper fresh off of a 6-foot hammer?
No, so what happened was he actually ate the 4-foot shark that my friend had.
Yeah, but I mean, you were fresh off of catching it, like you didn't have a break.
Oh, yes.
Nice.
Yes, correct. So John, the captain, he's like, you want a break? I'm like, no, let's go back there.
Well, that's great.
Reeled it back in and set the hook. So I think all in all, I was probably hooked up for a good 2 hours in total between a couple other sharks that I caught in that Goliath.
That's kind of insane. The next time someone says to me, George, you fish like a girl, I'm going to say thank you, I think. That's pretty good.
There is such a perception that women in the industry, and I'm not trying to, go all pro women and everything here, but there really is, let's be candid, there is a perception, because it seems like there's less of a female audience that is as aggressive in the fishing industry, and then the perception is either, the woman is out on the dock and she's all pretty and dressed up, whatever, so she has to be the girlfriend of some guy. She's not actually a fisherman, versus now there's actually women that are in the saltwater industry that are strong enough to be able to handle the same caliber of fish as those guys around them. So that I love being able to prove that stereotype wrong and be an advocate for that.
I don't think you proved it wrong. I think you smashed that conception that people. Obviously, you do very well in saltwater. You actually caught what, a swordfish as well? I seen you catch.
I did. So this year has been probably the most incredible year of diverse trophy catches that I've had so far. I had the opportunity to go down to Florida in the end of February, and I fished with Captain Nick Stanzik down in Isle Morada, so halfway down in the Keys. And he is the sword fisherman of the century. I mean, this guy just knows, lives, breathes swordfish. And so we had a really tough day out there. We had some 4 to 6 foot swells, and then some really 8 to 10 foot waves. So that was tough for this Minnesota girl. And then we were staring at the tip of a rod for 8 hours and had a couple cheap bites where one time a swordfish actually hit the weight instead of the bait and slashed the line, so that was a bummer. But at the very end, I'm like, I feel like something's going on, and sure enough, the rod loaded up, and we were in 1,700 feet of water compared to the 20 that I was in for the Goliath.
Well, you don't bring that up in a minute or two, do you?
No, it took a little bit of time. So I'm trying to remember. I think it was about an hour in all when
Wow.
all is said and done here. But it was such a beautiful fish, and not the largest swordfish out there by any means, but for me it was one of the most, if not the most outstanding trophy I've caught, just because of that whole experience and the never give up attitude that we had out on the water.
That's really amazing. I mean, you're just like breaking one record, personal record after another, as from what I can see. What do you have on tap next? I mean, you're just out here killing all these really golden species of fish. What's on your bucket list for saltwater yet?
Oh man, so there are a couple smaller species that I actually have not had the privilege of catching yet. One of which being an amberjack. I'd like to get a nice sized reef donkey. I'd love to get one of those. I have caught barracuda. I'd like to get a large one though. That would be kind of fun. But some of those reef species, and some of them that are less well known, like an African pompano, that's on my list as well. But the next large fish that I'd love to go after that I have yet to catch is a tiger shark. That's kind of, in my eyes, the big boy that I'd like to go after, and I'm headed down to Florida again in fall season, so I'm hoping to wrangle one of those in.
I just got a feeling we'll be seeing something on Facebook that Katie just got herself a big old tiger. What do you think?
I couldn't agree. I'm sure. I'm sure about it.
Well, I think a lot of people are starting to recognize your talents. I think you actually picked up a couple sponsors this year, haven't you, Katie?
I sure have. Well, and our story really started, George, with a connection via Lunkerville, because some of you who maybe were familiar with my name or said, oh, that name rings a bell. I was your Island Girl episode on Lunkerville, and that was last season. And George was on Lunkerville as well, so being able to connect that way.
Yeah, I was just a little different. They called me old school, so, you know.
Oh. They should have called you, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, there you go. That would work too. But that was a great episode too with Mike.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So we connected that way, but in the last few months, it seems like all these puzzle pieces have been coming together. Not only have I been able to network with you guys and have that cool experience, but I was approached by Deeper, and being part of their exclusive Deeper Heroes program and the pro staff aspect of that. So thrilled to be able to use their sonar to get on top of those fish, and that's part of my deadly arsenal of weapons in order to get on top of them, as I've been using that on my boat, and tells me exactly where I'm fishing, what the water temp looks like, what the structure looks like, and where those big bass are, so I'm able to get them in. I'm planning on bringing my Deeper down to Florida the next time I go down too, because I just would love to see what that looks like down there.
Yeah, it does work great in saltwater too.
Absolutely. So I'm thrilled for that. I just hope a shark doesn't come up and eat it. So there's Deeper, and then I've had a few opportunities after I filmed with Lunkerville. Mike D'Avila, he actually told me to maybe consider starting an Instagram page, and so I started doing that, and with that formed some great connections with a couple of smaller outfits that are a fishing tackle / apparel company. One of them is Lure Addiction, great company, check them out. And then Anchored Army, I call it, but that's really a nice family-owned company as well, and so they're more apparel-based. So I've started to work with these groups, and some of you might be familiar with a large social media presence, a group fishing community called Genuine Fishing. I actually was just recently approached to be the social media director for all of their social media accounts. So some of you might be following right now the Genuine Fishing Facebook page. If not, I'd say I'd recommend it. There's some great tips, tricks, and funny memes on there to get your days going.
That's great.
And there's an Instagram account there too.
Well, that's good. What we could do is, what we'll do, we'll put links on the page here, so anybody that's interested, they can follow along and check out some of these great folks that are helping you out.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I wanted to add something really quickly. It doesn't take a lot of talent for a cute girl to hire a guide, go out on TV, and look pretty while she catches a fish. And it's so nice that that's not the case here. This is a genuinely great fisherwoman who does all this by herself. It's phenomenal. It's just, a lot of credit goes to you.
Oh my gosh, now you have me blushing over here. Fishermen do blush. I appreciate that so much. And it is. It's such a, as you you've kind of discussed, there's the multifaceted approach to this of you can be a working professional, you can be involved in any kind of industry, and you can still, at the end of the day, get out there regardless of your age, regardless of your race, your identity, your gender, any of those things, and prove any of those stigmas wrong. It's really about the simple joys of fishing, and I've always found that the energy that I put into the people around me and being an educator and an ambassador for the sport, I get that back tenfold from the fishing community around me, and that's where I've learned so much of the small little drop of knowledge that I have about fishing is from those people.
Yeah, I think that was evident. I think you do a lot with kids too, don't you, Katie?
I sure do. I love teaching little clinics, and have the fortune of partnering with a city that's nearby here in Minnesota almost every summer and teaching kids. We take them off the dock every summer, and it's called Hooked on Fishing. And so what happens is you get a few ambassadors, a few volunteers. We start with kind of an education of, hey, here's Minnesota, here's some fish, and we show them bait that they're going to be using, get them familiar with that, they can touch it so they're not all grossed out by it, and teach them how to cast. And then we take them off the shoreline or a little dock, and they get to catch their first fish. And these sunfish are, 2 inches long, but to these kids, it means the world.
That angler, it's a 10-pound bass. I mean, let's face it,
Exactly.
they're going to remember that the rest of their life.
Exactly. It's creating that first memory, and it's the idea of there's so much natural resources around us that we can utilize and take a step away from the daily grind and from the technology and just go back to basics. And there's something about people, when you ask them about the first time that they went fishing, they tell the stories about when their grandparents took them out, or sitting on the dock with dad or with mom, and there's something really beautiful about that.
Yeah, there really is, and I think that's one of the things that at least I try to pass along. And one of the reasons we even do this show is to educate people. You want to pass along things that are good. We try to pass along tips, stories, and just life experience like this alone.
Absolutely. Well, it's about if you never try, you never know. So there's always so many things out there that you can do that, from a fishing perspective, even different lures you can try, different lakes, different techniques, different rod setups. The opportunities are endless, and it's one of those things where in our lives, it's so easy to sometimes say no, or I'm too busy, or maybe I'm not, it's out of my comfort zone. But all it takes is one yes, and that direction that your life's going can change.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we're getting short on time, but before we close this out, I wanted to ask you a question. If you had one more fishing trip to do in your lifetime, and it was only one, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, that is a hard question.
Well, I didn't say this would be easy.
One more trip only.
And you have 20 seconds.
That sounds so sad. That sounds sad. Okay, I would say, just based upon being true to my bucket list, number one for me is marlin, and the biggest fish. I want to go, young gal in the sea versus old man in the sea, and go to Australia for the big black marlin.
Wow, that's really setting them up there.
That's perfect. Yep. That's good. Do you actually think you're going to do that someday, Katie?
I don't think. I know. I know I will be doing that. Yep, 100%.
Well, that's awesome. I don't think you could have picked something better. I mean, if you're going to go for it, you go all the way.
All right, I get it. Yeah, I'll go catch. I'm gonna have to go catch a marlin. I get what you're saying. Yeah, you don't gotta be subtle about it.
George, why are you looking at me like that? Well, Katie, you've been great, and that music's telling us that we're getting short on time here. But I mean, we just touched on all the things I want to talk to you about. So I think we're going to have you back on a second episode if you're up for it.
Oh, let me think about that for all of 1 second. I would be honored.
Well, we really appreciate it. You have so many good stories to tell. You have to keep us up to date with all your fishing adventures. I mean, you are a true sportsman, a true angler. And we just love all the things that you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. Be true to yourself. And I think it just doesn't get any better than this.
I would say it takes one to know one, and you gentlemen are fantastic. Thank you for such an opportunity to be that educator and that ambassador.
But now you're making us blush, Katie. Well, we're going to let you go, and I think we're going to wrap up this episode of Anglers Outpost. What do you think, Josh?
No, that was fantastic. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Katie, for coming on. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, it just couldn't get better than that. Okay, Katie, thank you. Tight lines. Yeah. So, guys, just remember, you can get a hold of us. If you'd like to be on Anglers Outpost, you can get a hold of us. Drop us a note here. Drop a note in the comments. Email me at PoconoGeorge@outlook.com. And for our Facebook, guys.
Yeah, be sure to like and share. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. Thank you so much.
Well, we're going to wrap this episode up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave us some feedback, and hopefully we'll talk to Katie again real soon.
See you.
Tight lines, guys. We'll see you next episode.